long ago, when the winds over the Nile whispered secrets to the stars and temples stood like sentinels in the golden dust. There was a time when the gods still walked among mortals, in the shadowed corners of the desert, beneath veils of incense. Smoke and moonlight, the most feared of them, stirred not with malice, but with ancient purpose, deep in the Valley of Kings, where tombs kissed the earth and silence reigned eternal. A child named Layla dreamed. She lived in a humble village on the Nile's edge, her days filled with papyrus weaving and her nights filled with tales. Her grandmother, wrinkled like old leather scrolls, would speak in hushed tones by the oil lamp tales of gods so mighty even the pharaohs bowed their heads. Never call their names after dark, she warned. Some gods grant blessings, but the feared ones, they answer only in riddles, storms, and shadows. Layla, curious and unafraid, would lie awake in wonder. What would happen if I called them? She had always felt drawn to the unseemly shimmer in the dunes at sunset, the cold hush of catacombs, the flicker of unseen eyes behind falcon-headed statues. One evening, when the sky was a tapestry of pink and deep indigo, Layla wandered too far. She found herself at the ruins of an old temple, one not marked on maps, with pillars etched in forgotten script and sand curling around its base like a serpent. The air was heavy, still, and tasted like thunder. In the center of the temple stood a single black obelisk. On it, images of gods carved in a style older than the Old Kingdom itself. Their names were hidden, scratched out long ago, but their presence throbbed like a heartbeat in the stone. And then something whispered, not words, not wind, but a feeling, a cold breath down her spine, as if time itself paused. The dusk light shifted. Layla stepped closer. Her fingers brushed the base of the obelisk, and in that instant, the desert around her disappeared. She found herself in a place between time. The stars above were unfamiliar to many, too bright. The sky pulsed. Before her stood a massive throne made of black basalt. Upon it, a figure cloaked in shadows. His eyes burned like suns. His skin shimmered like polished obsidian. In one hand, he held a flail, in the other, a curved scepter. His voice when it came was the weight of falling stones and crashing rivers. "You have called me, child of the river." Layla trembled. Who are you?" "I have been called many names," the god said, "but your kind knows me as Set. Set, the god of chaos, the slayer of Osiris, the storm in the sand." The name Layla had heard only in whispers, in curses. "The feared one, you are not meant to be here," he said, "but still, here you are. I didn't mean to all who find the forgotten temple mean something," he said, leaning forward. "The feared gods were not always feared. We were protectors once, warriors, judges of balance. Then why do people fear you now?" He stood, because fear is easy, truth is not. "Let me show you." He waved his hand, and the stars above them shattered into memory. Layla saw a vision, temples gleaming under full moons, priests offering prayers to Set for protection during war. She saw him battling demons in the underworld to preserve Ro's journey. She saw people bowing not in fear but in reverence, but then betrayal. She saw the tale unfold, Osiris murdered, Isis grieving, Horus rising, the myths twisted over time. Set, the complex god of balance and chaos, was simplified into a villain. His temples fell into ruin. His name was scrubbed from stones. Layla returned to herself, gasping. "Why are you showing me this?" she whispered. "Because stories matter," he said, his voice like the Nile in flood. And you are one who listens, one who dreams. Will others listen too? Layla asked. Perhaps, but first you must remember. Tell the truth, wrapped in dream, child of the river. Let those who sleep wake. He stepped back into shadow, dissolving like a mirage. Layla opened her eyes. The obelisk stood silent. The stars above her were familiar again. The desert air was cool. She did not run. Instead, she placed her hand over her heart, whispered a vow only the gods could hear, and began the journey home. She didn't know it yet, but this was only the beginning. Beneath the sands, other gods stirred, the feared ones, the forgotten ones, and Layla would be their voice, their dreamer, their storyteller. The following night, Layla dreamed again. This time, it was not the god set who came, but something else, a rhythm in the air, a rustle of feathers, a pulse in her chest like the beat of great wings. The dream felt vast, stretching beyond her body, as if she floated high above the Nile itself. She stood atop a temple roof, the wind combing through her hair like a sacred chant. Below her, the world shimmered in golden dusk. Papyrus fields swayed. Her village glowed like amber, and beyond it, the river glittered with the colors of night. But this wasn't just a dream. It felt ... watched. A shadow moved across the stars. A falcon, not a bird, but something divine. He landed beside her, silent and regal. His head was that of a falcon, crowned with a golden disc encircled by a cobra. His body was of a man, strong, and draped in white and gold linen. His eyes blazed with the light of the midday sun. I am Horus, he said, voice like wind sweeping across the sands, son of Isis, heir to Osiris. Layla bowed instinctively, feeling the power that radiated. From him you saw Set, he said, not asking, but knowing. Yes, she whispered, he told you truth, but not all of it. Layla's breath caught. Why are you here? Because balance must be seen from all sides, he replied. And balance is not peace, it is struggle. It is night and day, storm and stillness. Even I have war within. Me, he gestured, and the world dissolved again. Now they stood at the edge of a great battlefield. The sands were scorched black. Great banners whipped in the wind. Statues lay broken. In the distance, Layla saw a shadow set, wielding his scepter, roaring as storms swirled behind him. Across from him stood Horus, wings spread, eyes glowing. This was not myth. Horus said softly, this was pain. I fought to avenge my father. I fought because the world demanded justice. Layla watched as the two gods clashed, light and shadow, wind and storm, falcon and beast. It was terrifying, beautiful. Neither was purely good. Neither was purely evil. There are no easy truths, Horus said. Set was chaos. I was order. But the desert needs both. Suddenly, the battlefield faded. Now Layla stood by the river, its waters glass smooth. The night was calm. She saw movement eyes breaking the surface. A crocodile, then two. Then more. A figure emerged from the river, massive, gleaming. His skin was green like the Nile's reflection, and on his head sat the shape of a crocodile's jaw. His gaze was heavy, ancient. I am Sobek, the god rumbled, protector of Pharaoh, master of waters. I rise where danger hides. Layla took a step back. Do not fear me, child, Sobek said. Though mortals tremble at my shape, my purpose is protection. I guarded the army. I blessed the floods. I devoured only those who threaten Maat. Maat, Layla asked, the balance of all things. Sobek and Horus said together. The falcon god and the crocodile god now stood beside each other. You see now, Sobek said, that we too are feared not because of cruelty, but because of power misunderstood. Then why do people forget this? Layla asked. Sobek's jaw tightened. Because fear spreads faster than memory. And kings rewrite what gods once lived. Layla's heart thudded. Then what do you want me to do? Horus knelt beside her. You are a dreamer, and dreamers carry what temples lose. Sobek nodded. You will speak the names. You will tell the old tales. You will walk the line between terror and truth. The stars above shimmered, and Layla awoke. Outside her window, the Nile hummed. The stars still blinked, but now they seemed to watch her differently. She touched the amulet at her chest, one she had never owned before. It was shaped like a falcon's feather, wrapped around a crocodile's tooth, a gift from gods who had been feared, but not forgotten, and now not alone. The third night came with rain, a rare whispering drizzle that kissed the clay roof above Layla's head. She lay beneath her linen sheets, eyes closed, but her thoughts rippled like disturbed water. The dreams had changed her hope and something. Inside her, she felt it like a weight, ancient and sacred, pulling her inward. And as her breath deepened, she slipped once more into the realm of the gods. This time, the dream was dark, not empty but full, like a tomb sealed for centuries, airless and silent, yet waiting. She stood in a vast hall carved from obsidian stone. Columns stretched into shadow, and torches burned with pale blue fire. Before her stood a set of massive golden scales. On one side, a feather. On the other, a heart. Layla felt her own heart shiver. A figure emerged from the gloom, not monstrous, not divine. A woman. She wore a long robe adorned with stars. Upon her head rested a single white ostrich feather. Her gaze was calm, ageless. Her voice, when it came, was the hush of papyrus turning. I am Maat, she said, goddess of truth, justice, and the balance of all things. Layla bowed, low and reverent. Maat gestured to the scales. All souls are measured here, she said. No matter how mighty, no matter how forgotten, the heart must be lighter than my feather. Only then may it pass into peace. And if it isn't? Layla asked. The torches dimmed. A rumble echoed from the darkness. Maat stepped aside, and there it was. The creature, massive, crouched, watching, a head like a crocodile's, with lion's shoulders and thick hippopotamus legs. Its eyes gleamed like polished jet. Its breath rattled the air. Ammut, Maat whispered, the devourer of the dead. Layla stared. The creature didn't roar. It didn't attack. It simply waited calm, still, ancient. She does not hunt, Maat explained. She does not chase. She only waits for lies. Layla swallowed. Is she evil? Maat turned her eyes to her. She is the consequence of choice. Suddenly, the hall dissolved. Now Layla stood beside the Nile again. But it was not the gentle river she knew. It churned with black currents. Across the water, souls floated, some in boats, some swimming, others sinking. From the mist emerged another figure. He was jackal-headed, with sleek black fur and eyes like moonstone. His robe trailed behind him like smoke. In his hand he carried a crook and flail. I am Anubis, he said, his voice deeper than death itself. Guardian of the scales, walker between worlds. Layla bowed. You judge the dead. She asked, I prepare them, he answered. I open the way, but the scale decides. He turned to her, and for a moment she saw her own heart in his hand, glowing softly, pulsing with memory and shadow. Even the living carry their weight. Layla felt exposed. What if my heart is heavy? Anubis tilted his head. Then, lay it down. They walked together through a temple of dreams, columns etched with hieroglyphs, ceilings painted with stars. Statues of gods looked on, silent and still. Anubis touched each one gently, as if greeting old friends. Fear me if you must, he said, but understand me, because you are death, Layla whispered. He nodded, but also peace. They reached a doorway lit with golden light. Beyond it, Layla could hear whispers, her ancestors, her mother's lullaby. The rustle of sand in a jar. Anubis stood aside. Truth is the only path, he said. Walk it, and you need fear no devourer. Layla stepped through the doorway and woke. The rain had stopped. A faint mist hung over the earth. The feather from her dream now rested on her. Windowsill real and impossibly white. She picked it up and smiled. Truth, she thought, isn't easy, but it is light as the crimson sun slid low over the dunes. Casting long shadows like sleeping giants, the air grew still, too still. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath, as though it, too, feared what might awaken when the night turned gold with fire. It was then that the stories of Sekhmet began. She was not born of gentle earth or quiet stars. She came from the burning eye of Ra himself, sent down to punish humankind when they grew arrogant and cruel. Her name was spoken in the hush of twilight, with voices barely above a whisper. For Sekhmet was wrath itself, beautiful, wild, and terrifying, with the head of a lioness and eyes like molten suns. Sekhmet did not walk. She roared across the battlefield, her feet stirring dust and bone alike. Warriors feared her more than arrows. Yet she was no demon. She was balance, justice, a fury born not of cruelty, but of broken harmony. In one tale, when humankind betrayed the divine order, Sekhmet descended to earth in a storm of flame. Cities trembled, rivers boiled. She drank the blood of the wicked, her thirst unquenchable. But Ra, seeing the destruction unfold beyond even his design, wept. To stop her, he tricked her with vats of red-dyed beer, pretending it was the blood. She craved, she drank deeply, and in her drowsy stupor, her rage softened. When she awoke, it was not as a destroyer but as a healer. Thus, two names lived within her: Sekhmet, the lioness of plague and war, and Hathor, her gentler twin, the goddess of music, joy, and love. In the city of Memphis, people built temples for her, not out of fear, but out of awe. Each temple was lined with lion statues whose eyes followed Eustone, guardians of a goddess who burned like the desert sun. Offerings of pomegranate, linen, and lotus were left beneath her altar, and those who dared approach with open hearts were often healed of illness and fear. One night, a young woman named Sekhmet came to Sekhmet's temple. Her village had fallen ill, and even the healers had abandoned hope. Sekhmet brought no gift, only her voice, and sang beneath the towering columns of the sanctuary. Her song was soft, a lullaby passed from mother to daughter for generations. They say, heard the song. She appeared in a dreamer woman wrapped in golden linen, her lioness eyes glowing with fierce tenderness. She placed a hand on Sekhmet's brow and whispered, "Bravery is not in the blade, but in the care you give." The next morning, the illness lifted, the village healed. And Sekhmet became a priestess, not of vengeance, but of balance. Children still light candles beneath Sekhmet's image when they feel afraid. For though she is fire, she is also the warmth that keeps the night from swallowing the world. This as the Nile stretched into the heart of the desert, its shimmering path twisted like a sacred thread pulled by unseen hands. The boat drifted silently. Nefret, wrapped in linen and wonder, leaned over the edge, watching the moon's reflection tremble on the water's surface. Each ripple whispered stories of gods older than pyramids, of voices that still echoed through the reeds. Beside her, the old priestess Khepra breathed deeply, the scent of lotus and river mud calming her mind. "Tonight," she said, in a voice soft as wind through a temple's broken columns, "we speak of the god who walks with silent Set. Set, the god of storms, deserts, chaos. His name was once whispered in reverence, then fear, then defiance. And now his name returned, rustling through forgotten papyrus scrolls and the dreams of those who still wandered the sands. In the beginning, Set was not evil. He was wild, yes. Untamed, yes. But he was balance. Brother to Osiris, guardian of Ra's solar boat, the god who slayed Apophis, the serpent of darkness every night. He was necessary. Storms brought change. Wind cleared what was stagnant. Even desert winds carried truths. But time, like sand, shifted under divine feet. One evening, as the villagers gathered near the fire, Khepra lit resin and began to speak of Set's transformation. In the days when Osiris ruled Egypt, Set grew jealous. Osiris, god of the fertile Nile and order, had what Set did not: adoration, a kingdom, a queen. Set's envy cracked the balance of the gods. In a tale heavy with shadow, Set lured Osiris into a coffin shaped perfectly to his form and sealed. It would lead. He flung it into the Nile like a forgotten relic. And thus began the age of mourning. Isis, Osiris's wife and the goddess of magic, searched endlessly. Her tears watered the land. The gods watched in silence. Horus, her son, grew in hiding, his destiny shaped by grief and prophecy. And when Horus challenged Set for the throne, the heavens trembled. For 80 years they battled God against God, sky against desert. They took the shapes of beasts, of serpents, of thunder. The world bent beneath their wrath. Finally, the tribunal of gods ruled in Horus's favor. Set, humiliated, retreated into the desert, his laughter swallowed by endless dunes. But the truth, whispered by desert winds, was more complex. Set was not banished. He was stationed, guardian of the sunboat, alone in the duat, the underworld. Every night he fought the serpent of chaos so the sun might rise again. Even in disgrace, he served. Khepra's eyes shimmered in the firelight. Feared, yes. Forgotten, never. Nefret listened, her young eyes wide. But why does everyone only tell the evil part? Because, Khepra said, fear makes simple stories. But gods, like people, are never simple. They continued down the Nile. At the river's bend, they passed a rock shaped like a satanimal, strange and angular, a creature with the snout of something not of this world. The villagers once left offerings, their milk, black bread, pomegranate seeds. Now only silence remained. That night, in dreams, Set came to Nefret not with thunder, but with stillness. He stood beneath a sky bleeding gold, his skin red like burning clay, his eyes dark as eclipses. Around his waist he wore the belt of a warrior. His voice echoed, like distant drums. You fear what you do not understand, he told her. But I am the god of storms for a reason. What do storms do, little dreamer? They break, she whispered. They also cleanse. She reached for his hand, and he dissolved into sand. In the morning, Nefret awoke with a new understanding. Not all fear was a warning, some was a teacher. Not all chaos was cruel, some was necessary. The boat glided toward Thebes, where the temples rose like dreams of stone. Nefret knew their journey was far from over. There were more gods to meet, more fears to unravel, more myths to cradle like sleeping birds, and set somewhere in the desert, watched with eyes the color of twilight. The sky had begun to change. Pale dawn stretched her fingers across the horizon, casting soft pinks and warm golds on the sails of the boat as it drifted farther up the Nile. The water rippled gently, parting for their journey, as if the river itself bowed in respect to the tale being told next. Khepra, wrapped in layers of age and wisdom, leaned her staff against the boat's wooden frame and turned her clouded eyes toward Nefret. You've heard of the gods of power, she said, but now you must know the god of judgment, Anubis. The air shifted. The boat seemed quieter. Anubis is not loud like Ra, not vengeful like Sekhmet, nor wild like Set. He is the stillness between heartbeats, the hush of the tomb, the breath of incense rising in the hall of truth. In the shadowed folds of her robe, Khepra retrieved a black stone amulet shaped like a jackal's head. It gleamed in the morning light. Once, she said, Anubis was the most important god in the land of the dead. Before Osiris ruled the underworld, it was Anubis who weighed the hearts of men. She began the tale. In the earliest times, when people still spoke to stars and carved magic into stone, death was a mystery cloaked in fear. Bodies were wrapped in linen, oils poured, and prayers whispered to Anubis. His face half man, half jackal watched from temple walls. His eyes missed nothing. They say he could hear a lie before it left the lips. But Anubis was not cruel. He was precise. He took the hand of every soul at the moment of death and guided it gently to the scales. Khepra's voice lowered, like the rustling of papyrus in wind. Picture it, child, a vast golden hall in the underworld. One by one, the dead arrive. Anubis meets them at the gate. In his hand is a feather, the feather of Mat, the goddess of truth. On one side of the great scale lies the feather. On the other, the soul's heart. If the heart is lighter than the feather, Khepra said, they pass on to the field of reeds, a paradise of endless sunlight, calm waters, and reunited loved ones. And if it's heavier, Nefret whispered. Khepra's eyes closed. The devourer waits. The creature, Ammut, part crocodile, part lion, part hippopotamus, crouched beneath the scale. One breath too heavy, one untruth too deep, and she would swallow the soul whole. But it is Anubis who holds the truth steady, Khepra continued. He does not punish, he simply sees. The boat floated past groves of date palms and limestone cliffs. Villages dotted the riverbank, where children played and smoke curled from morning fires. Yet Nefret's mind remained in the golden hall of judgment. She could see Anubis, now tall and silent, with black skin like obsidian and eyes rimmed in gold. He wore a sash of white and stood with reverence beside the scales. He did not speak often, but when he did, his voice came from the space between life and afterlife. The old priestess smiled faintly. Many fear him, but to those who lived well and with honesty, Anubis is a comfort, a protector of the dead, a shepherd of shadows. That evening, as twilight spread over the Nile like a velvet shroud, they docked near a ruined temple. Broken columns rose like ribs of forgotten gods, and jackal statues guarded the gates, their ears still alert after centuries of silence. Khepra led Nefret through the crumbled stones. They lit incense at the altar, placing a small loaf of barley, bread and a carved piece of turquoise before the jackal effigy. "You offer bread for the journey," Khepra said, "and turquoise for truth." The temple's silence felt different than the stillness of the desert. It was a silence filled with presence, like someone unseen watched with great attention that night. As Nefret lay beneath the stars, she dreamed of the hall of truth. She stood before the great scale. Anubis, calm and eternal, placed her heart on one side, the feather on the other. The balance held. He nodded, and though he said no words, she understood. "You carry no lies, little one, but you still have many truths to find." When she awoke, there was no fear in her chest, only calm, only quiet. Like the river before dawn, nightfall in ancient Egypt was not just an absence of sunlight, it was a transformation. The stars above scattered like golden grains spilled from a god's hand, and the Nile took on the luster of black silk. On this particular night, the wind whispered softly through papyrus reeds, carrying stories that had long been hidden in the folds of time in a quiet corner of the temple city. Nestled behind sandstone walls and date palms swaying lazily under the moonlight, there stood a lesser-known shrines, small, circular, and surrounded by a pool of still water. The locals avoided it after dusk, for it was said to belong to Sekhmet, the lioness goddess, the Eye of Ra, the bringer of plagues and protector of pharaohs. But not all feared her. Some listened. A young woman named Maya, whose dreams were often interrupted by vivid visions, stood silently by the shrine's edge. Her village healer had long said she was touched by the divine. Maya didn't quite understand what that meant. She only knew that in her dreams, Sekhmet came not with rage, but with sorrow, not with fire, but with light. Tonight, Maya had come to listen to ask the lioness goddess what burden lay behind her fury. The stone statue of Sekhmet glowed faintly in the moonlight, her face fierce and poised for war, with a solar disk atop. Her head and a serpent curled around it. Maya knelt before her, her hands open as if offering not gold, not incense, but silence. Then the wind changed. The air grew warm, though no flame was near. The water beside the shrine shimmered like polished obsidian. Maya closed her eyes and, in that sacred space, she slipped softly into vision. She stood in a desert not her own. The sand was crimson, the sky an eerie grey. Before her strode across the land, eyes burning like coals, her breath a hiss of power. The ground cracked beneath her steps. Villages vanished into dust, but Maya did not flee. She whispered, "Why do you weep in your rage?" Sekhmet stopped. The goddess turned her head, lion eyes catching the girl's question like a net catches the wind. Then something impossible happened. A single tear fell from Sekhmet's eye, heavy, glowing, and the color of molten gold. It struck the sand, and from it bloomed a single blue lotus. "You see me," the goddess said. Her voice was both thunder and lullaby. "They only see the war one wage, not the pain I carry. I protect, I destroy, I burn, then bless." Maya knelt again in her vision, her forehead to the warm sand. "Let me carry a drop of your sorrow. Let the world remember you're more than wrath." And as she bowed, the vision dissolved, and Maya found herself once more kneeling at the shrine's edge, a single blue lotus drifting on the water before her. No one saw her leave that night. But in the days that followed, the village healer, said the air had changed. Illnesses eased, crops strengthened, and people spoke again of Sekhmet only with fear, but with awe and reverence. Maya never shared her vision aloud, but sometimes, when the moon was high and the wind carried a quiet warmth, she returned to the shrine and whispered stories into the night of goddesses who cried, of rage that could be healed, and of a world that might one day listen. And as the Nile flowed on, timeless and undisturbed, the stars above blinked slowly in approval. The air inside the ancient temple was still so still that it felt as though time itself refused to enter. Carved jackals lined the inner corridor, their black stone eyes ever watchful, as if waiting for something sacred and silent to pass by. It was said that this was the last place a soul visited before it was weighed, before judgment was passed. The Hall of Shadows, hidden beneath layers of earth and myth, belonged to one god, alone in Anubis, the guardian of the underworld, the guide of souls. Few dared to speak his name after sunset, but tonight a soft sandal step echoed in the hall. A boy named Seti, no older than 13, had wandered into the temple ruins, chasing a lantern light that was not his. He wasn't afraid, only curious. His grandmother often spoke of Anubis, not with fear, but with reverence. He carries the lost, she would say. Not all gods rule with fire. Some protect with silence. Now, with only moonlight slipping through cracks in the roof, Seti stepped cautiously forward, drawn by a hum too low to be heard by ears alone. The great statue of Anubis stood at the end of the corridor, a noble, carved of obsidian, with the sleek head of a jackal and the body of a man cloaked in a funerary robe. In his hand he held the Anktha key to life. His other hand rested over a set of scales. Seti approached and bowed low, placing a small linen-wrapped object at the statue's feet. It was a memory his father's amulet left, after a sudden fever had taken him during the last flood season. "I don't want him to be forgotten," the boy whispered. "I don't know how to speak to the dead, but maybe you do." For a long moment, nothing happened. Then the torch brackets along the wall flickered gently to life, though no hand had lit them. A low hum rose from the stones themselves, as though the temple were beginning to breathe. The shadows behind the statue stirred, and from them stepped a figure draped in the deepest black, the folds of his robe moving like smoke. His jackal face shone softly, not with menace, but with a strange kind of peace. Anubis did not speak with words. He placed a single finger to his lips, a sign of quiet, and then pointed to the heart. Seti felt a warmth rise within his chest, as if a presence calm and ancient had entered. He saw, for a moment, the vast field of reeds, the paradise of the afterlife, found his father walking peacefully beside the Nile under starlight. Tears welled in Seti's eyes, but they did not fall. "I understand," he whispered. The god faded, like morning mist, and the flames along the walls dimmed. All was silent again. Yet the scales in Anubis's hand now held something that was not there before, a single white feather, light as air, pure as truth. Seti turned and walked back into the night, the amulet still at the statue's feet, but his heart no longer burdened. And as the temple returned to sleep, the jackals seemed less like watchers and more like guardians, protecting stories only the stars could hear. Long ago, when the desert winds howled like lions and the Nile ran red with dusk, there was a whisper passed between villagers. "Do not look too long at the crimson moon, or she will awaken." They spoke, of course, of Sekhmet, a lioness goddess, born from the eye of Ra, protector and destroyer. The flame that could both cleanse and consume. In the small village of Epot, near the edge of the desert, a young healer named Tia sat beneath the open sky. Her hands were stained with oils and herbs, and her mind burdened with too many sick, too many dying. A fever had swept through her village, and every remedy she knew had failed. That night the moon rose large and glowing red, like a glowing ember in the heavens. The elders murmured their prayers, the priests lit incense, and mothers clutched their children. But Tia, exhausted and desperate, stepped into the open fields alone. "If you are fury," she whispered to the sky, "then be fury for us. Burn this sickness away." Nothing stirred. Not at first, but then the wind shifted, and from the desert horizon came a figure, a woman cloaked in gold and flame, her eyes glowing like suns, her breath the heat of battle. Her steps did not disturb the sand, and yet, with each movement, the ground seemed to tremble with power. It was Sekhmet. In her lioness form, her mane blazing, her gaze unblinking. Tia did not cower. She bowed. "You call me," the goddess spoke, her voice echoing like a war drum softened by silk. Yet few understand what it means to summon flame. "We are dying," Tia said, her voice steady but low. "Even your wrath would be better than silence." Sekhmet's golden eyes flicked to the stars. "Fire destroys, but it also heals. What is burned cannot return yet in its place. Something new may grow." She raised her hand, and from her palm burst a ring of light, spiraling upward. The fever-like shadow seemed to shudder in the air, and with a mighty roar, Sekhmet sent a wave of heat through the village. The torches flared. The winds paused, and then quiet. The fever broke. The children stopped shaking. The breath returned. 2 weak lungs. Tia looked up, but the goddess was already fading, becoming one with the flickering mirage at the desert's edge. In the days that followed, the people of Ipot left offerings, lion carvings, bowls of red wine, and sacred lotus. They did not forget the fire that had saved them. Tia, now older, taught her daughter not just of remedies and roots, but of courage, of strength, and of the night a lioness stood beneath the crimson moon. And sometimes, when the desert was quiet, you could almost hear a roar in the wind, not a roar of destruction, but of life reborn, as the stars wheeled gently over the silent sands. Tales told by the firelight would often drift toward the one place no mortal wished to imagine, but all were destined to face. The Duatha, hidden realm beneath the earth, where the dead journeyed not to be punished, but to be measured. Among those who ruled this shadowy passage was Mat, the goddess of truth, balance, and the eternal order. She wore a single white feather in her crown, and though she held no spear, no flame, no thunder, hers was the might that kept the heavens from falling. It is said that after death, the soul travelled through twisting halls, guided by the jackal-headed god Anubis. The heart of the departed, filled with all the memories, choices, and secrets of a lifetime, would be weighed against Mat's feather, and should the scales tip heavy with guilt, the soul would be devoured by Ammut, the crocodile lion hippo, beast that waited, still and silent, in a small town by the Nile. There lived a wise elder named Menhu. His face was lined with age, his eyes soft from years of kindness. When he passed, the village wept, lighting oil lamps to guide his soul, and in the hush of the duot, Menhu stood before the scales. Anubis, with his sleek black jackal face, adjusted the beam. The feather glowed, The heart rested opposite, trembling faintly with every ancient beat, and then Matt entered. She did not speak. She did not need to. Her presence stilled the wind. Her feather gleamed brighter. The balance hovered, then settled. The scales were even. A light opened ahead, a corridor of stars. Men whose soul, weightless, luminous, passed through. But in the shadows behind him, another soul waited, one heavier with secrets, ambition, and grief. He had been a ruler once proud and cruel, forgotten now in the histories. He stared at the scale, and it trembled beneath the burden of his heart. Ammut growled, low and patient, "Is there no forgiveness?" The spirit whispered. Ma had finally spoke, her voice the calm of an endless sky. "Truth is not vengeance, it is light. You must face your light or flee from it." The soul wept and was no more. On earth, those who honored Matt carved her image into stone and painted her feather on tomb walls. They taught their children that truth was not just for the gods, it was for the living too. That kindness, balance, and honesty were not small things. They were the pillars that held the world, and in quiet moments, when a breeze passed over, papyrus scrolls or the sun cast perfect symmetry on a temple floor. Some believed it was Maat herself, reminding all who walk the earth that the heart must always be light. The desert night was vast, wrapped in ancient stillness. Above, the stars shimmered like scattered pearls across black silk. Below, the Nile moved in quiet rhythms, whispering secrets it had carried for thousands of years, and across the shifting sands, temples long forgotten still stood. Their columns crumbled, their murals faded, but their magic remained. For even the feared gods, whose names once made kings tremble, had dreams. In the silence of the ruined temple of Dendora, a child slept. Her name was Zitari, and she had wandered too far from her village, chasing moonlight and curiosity. But the gods, it seems, were not cruel to the innocent. They were only waiting for someone to listen. Zitari dreamt, in her dream, the stars above formed a ladder, and down it came a golden figure, the sun god. His eyes were fire, but his smile was peace. "Why do mortals fear us?" Zitari asked, her voice barely a whisper. Ra kneeled beside her, glowing in warm gold. "Because power, little one, is like fire. It can burn, but it can also give light." Then, one by one, the other gods appeared in her dream. Sekhmet, fierce and lion-headed, lowered her weapon and spoke softly. "I was rage, yes, but also healing. From fire comes renewal." Set, the storm god, stood in shadow. "I am chaos," he admitted, "but chaos shapes change. Without me, there is no becoming." Thoth, with the head of an ibis, unrolled a scroll. "Wisdom is feared when it reveals too much too soon, but I have always guided gently." Anubis smiled with gentle eyes. "Even in death, I lead with care." Osiris, wrapped in regal linen, stepped forward. "And I give life after endings. Even the darkest journey has dawn." Zitari blinked. "But the stories, they say you were cruel." Ra turned his palm upward, revealing tiny sparks of light. "The stories told in fear only show half the truth. What is feared is often misunderstood. We were never cruel, little one. We were vast." Then Maat came last, her feather floating down from the sky like a blessing. "Truth is the thread of all things," she said. "When the world forgets us, it forgets balance. But when someone remembers, even in dreams, we awaken." The gods began to fade, but their presence lingered. Like incense, Zatari awoke in the temple ruins, the moon now high. Around her, the carvings on the walls seemed brighter, the colors richer. The gods were not gone. They were only waiting to be remembered. Back in her village, she would speak of her dream, and though many would smile and nod, thinking it just a child's tale, something ancient stirred in their hearts. And from that night forward, whenever the wind passed gently through the reeds, or the stars seemed to blink more brightly, someone would always whisper, "The gods are not gone, they are only sleeping and dreaming beneath the eternal sky."